Hello students, welcome back to the class. Yes, we are dealing with a very beautiful chapter, that is photosynthesis in higher plants. In last session we discussed about different types and then different groups of the pigments. Okay, now let me talk about a very unique and then very something different topic, which is mostly of concept of physics, that is absorption spectrum, children. Okay, when I talk about absorption spectrum, the word itself says absorption means what? Absorption of the light. Spectrum means what? Spectrum is what? When a light is splitted, that portion, that Vibgyor is called what? Spectrum. Okay, now let me talk. When sun emits energy in the form of what? Electromagnetic radiations. What? Sun emits its energy in the form of what, children? In the form of what? Electromagnetic radiations. Okay, whatever the sun emits the light, those lights will be in the form of electromagnetic radiations. Okay, the role of pigments to absorb light energy at a different wavelength of visible spectrum can be shown through absorption spectrum. Okay, absorption spectrum is a process where the role of pigments means, see, in yesterday session what did I say? Different kind of pigments will be having a capacity of absorption of different wavelength. Andre different wavelength ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಡಿಫ್ರೆಂಟ್ ಇರ್ತಕ್ಕಂಥ ಪಿಗ್ಮೆಂಟ್ಸ್ ಏನು ಮಾಡ್ತವೆ? ಅಬ್ಸಾರ್ಬ್ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಳ್ತವೆ. ಹೌದಾ? ಅದು ಯಾವ ಥರ ಅನ್ನೋದನ್ನು ನಾವು ಅಬ್ಸಾರ್ಪ್ಷನ್ ಸ್ಪೆಕ್ಟ್ರಮಲ್ಲಿ ನಾವು ತಿಳ್ಕೋಬಹುದು. ದಿ ರೋಲ್ ಆಫ್ ಪಿಗ್ಮೆಂಟ್ the role of pigment to absorb light energy at what? At different wavelength of what? Of visible spectrum. Visible spectrum is very important. Okay, the pigments will be having capacity to absorb only in between the visible spectrum. Okay, can be shown through who? Can be shown through absorption spectrum. Can be shown through what? Absorption spectrum. Okay, now the absorption spectrum of chlorophyll A show high peak in blue and then red region of the spectrum. If I draw a graph for this, then let me take a graph. Okay, then it will be very useful and then it will be it will be understandable for you what I mean actually to explain you. That will be that graph I'm going to draw in later session. But let me talk what actually the visible spectrum will be and then what is the main capability of them and those all things. Okay, now the absorption spectrum of chlorophyll A. What? Absorption spectrum of chlorophyll A show what, children? It show high peak. In which color? In blue and then red region. Okay, blue and then red region of what? Red region of the spectrum. In Vibgyor, in the spectrum in Vibgyor, the blue and then red region, there will be high peak of chlorophyll A. Okay, graph showing the rate of photosynthesis at a different wavelength of visible spectrum is called action spectrum. This is also new thing for you. I am going to talk about that, don't worry. Okay, now what is actually action spectrum? Absorption means level of absorption. Action means the absorption capacity, how the action is going to be given. Means This action spectrum is nothing but graph which is showing the rate of photosynthesis. Okay, the rate of photosynthesis at what, at different wavelength of, at different wavelength of what children, visible, at different wavelength of visible spectrum. ಅಂದರೆ ಏನಪ್ಪ, ಅಬ್ಸಾರ್ಪ್ಷನ್ ಸ್ಪೆಕ್ಟ್ರಮ್ ಅಂದ್ರೇನು, ಯಾವುದೇ ಪಿಗ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಆಗಿರ್ಬೋದು ಆ ಪಿಗ್ಮೆಂಟ್ದು ಅಬ್ಸಾರ್ಪ್ಷನ್ ಕೆಪಾಸಿಟಿ ಡಿಫ್ರೆಂಟ್ ವೇವ್ಲೆಂತಲ್ಲಿ ಯಾವ ಪೀಕ್, ಎಷ್ಟು ಪೀಕ್ ಆಗಿ ಅದು ಅಬ್ಸಾರ್ಬ್ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಳ್ತದೆ ಅನ್ನೋದು ಅಬ್ಸಾರ್ಪ್ಷನ್ ಸ್ಪೆಕ್ಟ್ರಮ್. ಅದ್ರ ಆ್ಯಕ್ಷನ್ ಎಷ್ಟಿರುತ್ತೆ ಅನ್ನೋದು ಆ್ಯಕ್ಷನ್ ಸ್ಪೆಕ್ಟ್ರಮ್. ಈಗ ಫಾರ್ ಎಕ್ಸಾಂಪಲ್, ಈಗ ಕ್ಲೋರೋಫಿಲ್ ಹೈ ಪೀಕ್ ಇತ್ತು ಅಂದರೆ ಅದರ ಆ್ಯಕ್ಷನ್ ಸ್ಪೆಕ್ಟ್ರಮ್ ಏನಿರ್ತದೆ, ಹೈ ಇರ್ತದೆ. ಯಾಕೆ ಅಂತಂದರೆ ಅಬ್ಸಾರ್ಪ್ಷನ್ ಜಾಸ್ತಿ ಇದೆ ಅಂದಮೇಲೆ ಅದ್ರ ವರ್ಕ್ ಏನಿರ್ತದೆ, ಆ್ಯಕ್ಷನ್ ಏನಿರ್ತದೆ, ಹೈ ಇರ್ತದೆ. ದಟ್ ಈಸ್ ವೆರಿ ಸಿಂಪಲ್, isn't it? Absorption spectrum is graphic representation of degree and then portion of light wavelength absorbed by a substance. Okay, this is important point, it is not there in your NCERT. Absorption spectrum means what? It is a graphic representation. What it is? A graphic representation of what? Degree ಅಂದರೆ ಹೈ ಡಿಗ್ರಿ ಇದೆಯೋ, ಲೋ ಡಿಗ್ರಿ ಇದೆಯೋ, ಡಿಗ್ರಿ and portion how much actually, okay na, and portion of light wavelength and portion of what children, light wavelength absorbed, okay, absorbed by a different substance or else the pigments. Okay na. Now the visible part of radiation. What actually the visible part? Visible light ranges in between 390 nanometer to 760 or else 763 also I can say. This is visible nanometer. In the last session only I explained about it, isn't it? And then lower than the 390 nanometer, it is called what? UV radiations. It is called what? UV radiations. And then more than 760 nanometer or else more than 765 nanometer, it is called what? Infrared radiation. Okay na, it is called for what? Infrared range. Okay, yesterday already I talked about this. Now let me talk. See, if I take the sunlight, okay, if I talk about the sunlight, this is, just imagine this is as a sun. When sun wavelength will be there, if I take a spectrum, then the sunlight will be visibilized into 7 colors. What are those 7 colors? Those 7 colors are what? Violet, indigo, blue, green, yellow, orange, and then lastly what? Red. ಯಾವಾಗ ನಾವು ಸನ್ಲೈಟ್ನ ಒಂದು ಸ್ಪೆಕ್ಟ್ರಮ್ ಯೂಸ್ ಮಾಡಿಕೊಂಡು ಸ್ಪ್ಲಿಟ್ ಮಾಡ್ತೀವಲ್ಲ, then it will be what? It will be showing how many colors children? 7 colors. What are those 7 colors? Vibgyor, violet, indigo, blue, green, yellow, and then orange, and then red. For them I am giving you the what is the wavelength. Okay, the wavelength of violet is 390 to 430 nanometer, and then indigo 430 to 470, this blue 470 to 500 nanometer, and this green 500 to 560 nanometer, and then yellow 560 to 600 nanometer, orange 600 to what? 650 nanometer, red is 650 to 760 nanometer. This is what actually the spectrum line. Okay na. Radiation shorter than wavelength of 360 nanometer. 360 ನ್ಯಾನೋಮೀಟ್ರ್ಗಿಂತ ಶಾರ್ಟರ್ ಇರೋದನ್ನು ಯು ವಿ ಅಂತ ಕರಿತೀವಿ. 760ಕ್ಕಿಂತ ಮೇಲಿರೋದನ್ನು ವಾಟ್ ಇನ್ಫ್ರಾರೆಡ್ ರೇಡಿಯೇಷನ್ಸ್ ಅಂತ ಕರಿತೀವಿ. ಓಕೆನಾ, ಇನ್ಫ್ರಾರೆಡ್ ರೇಡಿಯೇಷನ್ಸ್. ಮೋರ್ ದ್ಯಾನ್ 760 infrared and then below than 390 is called what? UV radiations. Now let me talk the graphical representation. Okay, this is the graph which is showing the absorption spectrum. Okay na, absorption spectrum of chlorophyll A. This is one axis, this is another axis. Graph is showing with what children? It is showing absorption spectrum of what? Chlorophyll A and then chlorophyll B. Okay, here see, this is the absorption of light and then this will be the Vibgyor. Let me write in numbers. Vibgyor. Okay, now what did I say? Absorption spectrum ಅಂದರೆ ಏನು? ಪ್ರತಿಯೊಂದು ಪಿಗ್ಮೆಂಟ್ಗೂ ಪ್ರತಿಯೊಂದು ವೇವ್ ಲೆಂತ್, ಇನ್ ಬಿಟ್ವೀನ್ ವೇವ್ ಲೆಂತಲ್ಲಿ ಏನಿರ್ತದೆ, ಅಬ್ಸಾರ್ಪ್ಷನ್ ಕೆಪಾಸಿಟಿ ಅನ್ನೋದು ಜಾಸ್ತಿ ಇರ್ತದೆ. ಇನ್ ದಿಸ್ ವಿ ಆರ್ ಟಾಕಿಂಗ್ ಅಬೌಟ್ ವಿಚ್ ಕೈಂಡ್ ಆಫ್ pigments? Chlorophyll A and then chlorophyll B. Now I am going to take one color for chlorophyll A. I am taking red color for chlorophyll A. See, in last session, in previous, just I talked about what? Chlorophyll A. When I discuss about this pigment, chlorophyll A absorbs what? It absorbs the blue and then red color more. Okay, blue and then red color range is 470 to what? 470 to 500 and then 650 to 760. Means if this is chlorophyll A, then what happens? The violet, whether the chlorophyll A absorbs violet? No. Then the graph will be low only. Indigo? No. What about blue? Yes, of course. In the blue, the spectrum will be having a high peak. Whether green? No. Suddenly it falls down. Whether yellow? No. Orange? No. But again, red, it absorbs more. This will be the chlorophyll A pigment's absorption spectrum. Now, if I talk about chlorophyll B, I am taking for chlorophyll B blue color. Okay, chlorophyll B blue color. Chlorophyll B absorption rate is somewhat near to this only. Okay na, means like chlorophyll B absorbs same wavelength of blue and then red color, but what happens, due to the structural change, only wavelength differs, that's it. Okay na, see, this will be the chlorophyll B. This will be what? Chlorophyll B. This is chlorophyll B. If I draw about carotenoids and all, carotenoids will absorb violet color more. Okay, and then somewhat about the indigo, and then that's it. Violet and then indigo will be responsible for the what? Carotenoids. This is absorption spectrum. Now if I talk about action spectrum, what did I say? What actually the action spectrum means? Let me draw once again the graph. Okay, just keenly observe this one. This is one axis. In this axis we drawn about Vibgyor. Okay na, I am right? Yes, of course. This will be 390 nanometer and then this will be 760 nanometer. Now if I take action spectrum with chlorophyll A, only action spectrum, that is absorption spectrum, this is action spectrum. with whom? With chlorophyll A. ಆ್ಯಕ್ಷನ್ ಸ್ಪೆಕ್ಟ್ರಮ್ ಅಂದರೆ ಏನು? ಕ್ಲೋರೋಫಿಲ್ ಎ ಪಿಗ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಎಷ್ಟು ಅಬ್ಸಾರ್ಬ್ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಳುತ್ತಲ್ಲ ಆವಾಗ ರೇಟ್ ಆಫ್ ಫೋಟೋಸಿಂಥಸಿಸ್ ಯಾವ ಥರ ಇರ್ತದೆ. ಈಗ ಫಸ್ಟ್ ಅಬ್ಸಾರ್ಪ್ಷನ್ ಸ್ಪೆಕ್ಟ್ರಮ್ ಹಾಕ್ತೀನಿ. ಕ್ಲೋರೋಫಿಲ್ ಎದ ಅಬ್ಸಾರ್ಪ್ಷನ್ ಸ್ಪೆಕ್ಟ್ರಮ್ ಏನಿರ್ತದೆ ವಿಸಿಬಲಲ್ಲಿ? 0. ಇಂಡಿಗೋಲಿನೂ 0. ಬಟ್ ಬ್ಲೂ ಬಂದ ತಕ್ಷಣ ಏನಿರ್ತದೆ? ಹೈ ಪೀಕ್ ಹೋಗ್ತದೆ. ಗ್ರೀನ್ ನೋ, ಯೆಲ್ಲೋ ನೋ, ರೆಡ್ ನೋ. ರೆಡ್ಡಲ್ಲಿ ಏನಿರ್ತದೆ? ಹೈ ಇರ್ತದೆ. When absorption spectrum is high at that region, the action spectrum is also high. This is action spectrum. Means what? When absorption is more, then photosynthesis will be more. Its action will be more. ಓಕೆನಾ? ಈಗ ನೋಡ್ರಿ, ನಮ್ಮ ಬಾಡಿಯಲ್ಲಿ ಎನರ್ಜಿ ಜಾಸ್ತಿ ಇದ್ದಾಗ ಏನಿರ್ತದೆ? ನಾವು ವರ್ಕ್ನು ಏನು ಮಾಡ್ತೀವಿ? ವರ್ಕ್ ಡನ್ ವಿಲ್ ಬಿ ಮೋರ್. ಸೇಮ್ ಲೈಕ್ ದ್ಯಾಟ್ ವೆನ್ ಅಬ್ಸಾರ್ಪ್ಷನ್ ಈಸ್ ಮೋರ್ ಬೈ ದಿ ಪಿಗ್ಮೆಂಟ್, ದಿಸ್ ಪಿಗ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಈಸ್ ವಾಟ್? ಕ್ಲೋರೋಫಿಲ್ ಎ ಪಿಗ್ಮೆಂಟ್. ವೆನ್ ಕ್ಲೋರೋಫಿಲ್ ಎ ಪಿಗ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಈಸ್ absorbed more blue and then more red, at that peak the photosynthesis level will be what? More, children. If I talk when violet and then orange is there, then what happens? The photosynthesis rate will be fall down. Why? Because violet, indigo, green, yellow and then orange, they are absorbed only by carotenoids and then some chlorophyll pigments. But chlorophyll, as it is a king pigment, it absorbs more in blue and then red in color. Okay, I hope you people understood about action spectrum and then what? Absorption spectrum. Okay, now this is what actually some of the physiological theories which are mainly to know how come actually the absorption is going on and then its action is going on in the photosynthesis process. In next session, in next class, we are going to start a actual chapter. The depth of the chapter starts from, see, photosynthesis divided by two phases, that is light reaction and then dark reaction. I said about that, isn't it? So from the next session, I am going to talk about the first phase of the photosynthesis, that is light reaction. As we already came to know what actually photosynthesis, what actually the pigment, what actually their absorption, what actually their action spectrum, now we are very sufficient to know what actually the process. Those process I am going to explain in the next sessions. Okay, I hope you people already understood about today's class, children. Thank you.